should be.
Everyone, we're gonna be live on YouTube in just a second, so anything you say will be on the internet, just as a reminder.
So dinner last night. Make like a, I do, but can you get? Yeah, if I just move this out.
We're live, everybody. So.
No, letters. Breathe.
Okay. Don't run me over.
Oh, so we only have 10 toes. I can get all 10 at once. Oh.
All right, we are almost ready.
Can
you open this up?
We're trying to get Farina upstairs.
No, don't get Farina upstairs.
Marcia, open it up for her, please.
Just falling.
I thought you were gonna help, but just wait out of the way.
I'm gonna take her upstairs in my car.
Can somebody close this door too behind her?
I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. Thank you so much. I just can't get up. I'm injured in my back. Oh.
You need some lidocaine patches like that.
I appreciate it. We'll be all right.
You fall or twist?
No, I've just been working out a lot. Yeah, twisting. I've been doing a lot of twisting, and it's caused me to have a little strain. But that's all right. It's perfectly fine. I'll be right as rain tomorrow. Okay. So good to see everybody. Good to have another day where we're gonna study some Talmud. Oh, it's just me. Okay. We are going to let me share our bracha. And we will offer our blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Excuse me, if you say amen, you get full credit. Okay. Let's see where we're gonna start today. Okay, so we'll start here with Rabbi Elazar. So Rabbi Elazar said, one who is uncertain whether he recited Shema or whether he did not recite Shema. We know we're obligated to recite Shema twice every day, right? When we wake up, before we go to sleep. You also, one way to take care of that, you'd say it 4 times a day if you did it in a kahal, but would be to say it in the morning service and the evening service as well. So if you literally said it when you wake up, at the morning service, at the evening service, and before you went to bed, it would be 4 times, but really it's 2. So if you're unsure whether you recited it correctly or you did not recite it, you must recite it again. So it's a mitzvah by Torah law, according to him, to recite Shema. However, if one is uncertain whether he prayed or whether he did not pray, he does not pray again, as the obligation to pray is not from the Torah. It's d'Rabbanan. It's a law of the rabbis. And Rabbi Yochanan said that he should pray again, if only a person would pray throughout the entire day. So he's saying because it's so praiseworthy to pray, you might as well, even though you might not have to. You should anyway. And we'll see the rabbis come along to that as the answer to many things, is even if you might not have to, you should anyway. And if you should anyway, then it becomes a have to. You see how that works? Yes?
When we say Shema at Friday night Shabbat service.
Yeah.
When I go home and go to bed, should it be said again? Or have I
So that's I would say it again right before you go to sleep, because I like that as a personal practice. That's what I do personally. So I don't say, well, I said it at evening service. You could, but I would say it's the same thing Rabbi Yochanan says here.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, really, does it hurt? Now the rabbis will say, Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is the minority in some of these cases. For instance, the rabbis will say, right? It says one does not pray again, but also we don't repeat blessings. So if you already said a blessing, you don't say it twice, right?
That's what was confusing me, a blessing versus a prayer.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, so that's the difference here, right? I guess. And so we're gonna talk more about prayer. Oh, let me pull up. I need to find. And Rabbi Yehuda said that Shmuel said, one who was standing in prayer, haya omed b'tfilah, and remembered v'nizker that he already prayed, shehit palel, must interrupt his prayer, even in the middle of a blessing. Posek, the afilu be'emtza bracha. So again, this is saying Shmuel taught Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda is teaching us that one who is standing in prayer, he's doing the Amidah, and he remembers he already did it, should stop. Right?
Why? It's not a blessing.
Well, it says here, must, even in the middle of a blessing, it says.
Okay.
Afilu be'emtza bracha. And so, right, so prayer is also, blessings are part of prayer. So it's like, that's really a difference without a distinction, right? It's like they can call it a separate category, but really it's like the idea about prayer being from the rabbis isn't that blessings are from God, because if they're instituted as prayers, they're still from the rabbis. It's about the Shema. The Shema comes from the Torah. Specifically, it's a line that comes from the Torah, and so that might be a more specific thing. But the Gemara is going to come in and say, are we 100% on this? Right? Is that so? Didn't Rav Nachman say, when we were students in the school of Rabba Bar Ava, that is. Let me see what his name is here. Rav Nachman, Ki Havinu, Rabba Bar Avu.
Yeah.
So Rabba Bar Avu, we raised a dilemma before him. Those students in the school of Rav who mistakenly recited a blessing from the weekday Amidah on Shabbat, what is the ruling with regards to completing the weekday prayer? Now remember, you all come on Shabbat, right? When we do the Amidah, what's the difference between the Amidah we do on Shabbat and the Amidah that you don't recite because you're not here on weekdays, but that we would recite on a weekday?
Leave out a number of things because we don't ask God for things on Sabbath.
Right. How many do we do on Shabbat? How many blessings are there in the Amidah on a weekday?
On a weekday, I think is 18.
Close. They're called the Shmona Esrei.
Right.
But they're really the Tisha Esrei. They're really 19. Blessings of the Amidah. And how many are there on Shabbos? 6.
6.
Avot b'imahot, Givurot, Kedusha. Sometimes we'll separate and say 7, if you could separate Kedushat Hashem and Kedushat Hayom. But if you're just saying Kedusha is 1, then 3. And on the other side, we have Hoda'ah, Thanksgiving, Avodah, worship, and Shalom, peace. Those are the 6 that we keep on Shabbos. The others are for many good things. We ask God to give us, here I could actually pull it all up, but we ask God to give us a good season. And we ask God to give us here, there's a whole bunch. Binah, wisdom, tshuva, repentance, slicha, forgive us. Geulah, redeem us. Refuah, heal us. Birkat Hashanim, make you should be rich, right? Make the year a good one. Cherut, for freedom. Mishpat, justice. Al Risha, that the wicked should vanish from the earth. Tzadikim, that the righteous should have a special blessing. Yerushalayim, that Jerusalem should be blessed. Yeshua, another. So if we're going to say the other was redemption, then this one is salvation. And Shomea Tefillah is the last one, that God hears prayers. Those are the blessings we omit on Shabbat. Why? It may not be in here, but this is good information. Why do we omit those on Shabbos?
God doesn't work on Shabbos.
Good, exactly. And what are we doing in these that we're not doing in the others? We're not thanking.
We're asking.
We're asking for things, right? And in fact, we call these blessings the bakashot, which means the requests.
Bavakasha, please, yeah.
Right, it comes from the same from
Yeah.
bavakasha, right?
Okay.
The bakashot are the requests, the things we're asking for, and we don't ask God for things on Shabbos because that's not the point of Shabbos. The point of Shabbos is to rest. So we thank God for these other things, for the honor of our ancestors, we praise God's power and God's holiness in the first three. And in the end, we thank God for, we worship God. We thank God again with Hoda'ah. And we bless the peace that God creates on earth. It's almost like asking, but not quite. And so those are the ones we do on Shabbos. Okay. But what if you said one of those weekday blessed. So I said all of that so you understand but what if you started doing the weekday Amidah, but it was Shabbos and you were doing Bakashot? What is the rule as regards? Do you finish the weekday Amidah? Do you start over with the Shabbos Amidah? Do you have to go whip yourself because no, but it's like did you mess up in some truly egregious way? And here they're going to say, and Rabbah bar Avu said to us, the ruling is that one must complete the entire blessing. How then did Rabbi Yehuda say that one must interrupt his prayer even in the middle of a blessing? But, sorry about that. The Gemara rejects this. How can you compare the two cases? On Shabbat, in the one case on Shabbat, the individual is one who is obligated and should actually recite all 18. What?
Yeah.
And it is the sages who did not impose upon him in deference to Shabbat and instituted an abridged formula. But here, didn't he already pray? Therefore, he can stop. So they're saying this is two separate things. What are they saying is happening in these two separate cases? The guy who was doing the weekday Amidah on Shabbat hadn't prayed the Amidah yet. It's not a case of repeating a blessing, which you don't do, so you can stop. If you already said a blessing and you're saying it again, a prayer, you're saying it again, you can just stop. You can go, oh, wait, no, I did that, shoot. He's saying in that case, you can stop because you already said one. You're just doing a good thing by stopping yourself. So that's fine. If it's the first time you're saying it, if you're saying it as part of your liturgical process and you started it and it's wrong, the Gemara is saying that he's saying, not that it's always right, but he's saying that what you do is you finish that weekday Amidah because you started it. Now, I'm like, you got one blessing in, that really, now you got to, because they start the same way anyway. The first three are the same in both, but question?
Why could it possibly be wrong to repeat a blessing?
Why
guess
could
I
it be
can
wrong
be-
to be?
If the blessing is a request, I guess I can understand, but otherwise, why is it wrong to repeat a blessing?
A blessing over the same thing, for instance. Like if you're blessing a rainbow, bless that rainbow. Don't bless that same rainbow twice. If it goes away and another rainbow comes up, you can bless that rainbow. But don't say the same blessing over the rainbow twice.
Why?
Because it's considered what we call audacious prayer. It's wasting God's time. You already blessed the rainbow. God heard you the first time. God's not deaf. Is basically they're like, now you're just wasting God's time. God could be focused on something else or everything, and you're just cluttering up the world with your audacious extra. You're being extra. You're being too much, is what the rabbis are saying. Just bless it once, right? This is the way the rabbis are trying to find this middle path, right? We often take as leniency what they are just trying to not go to the farthest extreme, right? They're not the most extreme to the, to the stringency, to the far right on everything. They're not. But they're also not just trying to let you off the hook. They're trying to get you to do things intentionally. Say an intentional blessing over your food. Don't bless it twice. Right?
Yeah.
Say the blessing every time, say it right. That shows better honor to God than saying it 6 times.
Who is the audience for this? If it's a lot of old people, they're gonna make a mistake.
The audience for this is, I mean, in its time, the audience for this was those who were seeking to find a way to connect with God outside the confines of the sacrificial system. And so this was really for really nerdy people who wanted to figure out how to live in accordance with the will of God in a world that had faced catastrophic failure of the Jewish system. Today, the audience for this is people who want to live according to Jewish law, people who want to understand how Judaism thinks, people who want to trace the rules and thoughts of the rabbis across the last couple thousand years. One second. It's Lori upstairs. She was like, your flowers are upstairs. I was like, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, we read this because the rabbis are wrestling with what God wants of us. And we can see in the way they think about it how we might interpret God's desired way of life for us today. I think this can teach you something. Even just this here can teach you something. I actually think this goes well with, it sounds like it'd be in contrast to measure twice, cut once, but it's not, right? You measure, you practice, you get ready, even up to the whole 13 years up to bar mitzvah. And even now you can still, you work to get ready, you work to get yourself in a place where when it comes time to pray, you can do it correctly once, where you can do it intentionally with honor, right? This is the way we should live. Not just the way we should pray. You can read that into it if you want. That's how when I see this, that immediately goes to my brain. I get that the rabbis are telling us that you should do things with intentionality, that is the way to honor God. And that's the way to live a good life. Now here they're talking about prayer, but they're also talking about us. I think that's the enduring divine truth that lives behind words of men, right? They didn't write that truth. That truth screams out of the text. You just have to read it out of it. Does that answer your question? I hope so. Right. So here, Rabbi Yehuda said that Shmuel said, one who already prayed. So this is, let's say you wake up in the morning and you do your prayers at home, and then enters a synagogue to find a congregation praying, right? He comes in and finds they're doing the Amidah there. If he is able to introduce a new element, here it says, Im yachol lechadesh ba'davar. So if he is able to do something new, in other words, if there's some part of that prayer he didn't do at home or wasn't able to do at home, for instance, the Amidah, you can't do the repetition out loud unless you're with a group of 10 people. If you're at home and you pray Shacharit on your own, you do the Amidah, you just do it silently. You read it silently.
Okay.
You can't do the out loud repetition without 10 men or 10 people for us. So what do? If you go in and see this, you wouldn't do the silent part again because you've already done that. But you could do the repetition with them because you haven't done that. That's a new element. That's a new thing you didn't do already, right? So he's saying if he goes to this synagogue, if there's some new part of it that he hasn't been able to do or hasn't done in his personal prayers, he can pray again. And if not, he cannot. Right? If it's only if he did everything, it was all good, no more praying for him. He's done. The Gemara notes this concept is identical to Shmuel's previous statement. It's just explaining regarding one who already prayed that he need not pray again. Nevertheless, both statements are necessary. If he had taught us the first halacha, we would have said that applies only to a case involving an individual who prayed and an individual who began to repeat the prayer. So we wouldn't have had this one thing about an individual and the community. So he said we had to get the second note of halacha, but it's not different. He's not making a different point here than he is up here where Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says this. That one who is standing in prayer and remembered that he already prayed must interrupt his prayer. That's true. They don't contradict, it's saying. They're both true. But in this case, it's that in one case, you don't need to pray again. And in this case, you also don't need to pray again. Reminding you shouldn't unless there's something new. And then you can pray that. Yes, no, thoughts? Where are we?
I'm not struggling with that. I'm struggling, still wrestling a little bit with the idea of audacious prayer. I can see and understand that one shouldn't, quote, bother God by trying to grandiosely, narcissistically bring oneself to his attention. But on the other hand, I can see God smiling and saying thank you if what an individual is doing is to say, dear Lord, I really am feeling this gratitude all over again. I really am thankful. Thank you. I can see God saying, you're not disturbing me. I appreciate your gratitude.
Lauren, you're so nice. I love that. These rabbis were not Kabbalists. They're trying to figure out how to do things. Kabbalists, a couple thousand years later, or 1,500 years later, can play games with maybe the heart just moved. They're not doing nothing based on the heart, right? They're trying to figure out what the rules are.
Yeah.
And so they're not going there. Now again, it's like the heart so moves you. Remember that the rabbis don't believe prayer has anything to do with that. Remember, there's very little spontaneous prayer in Judaism. The prayer they're talking about is liturgy. Liturgy is keva. You need both keva and kavanah. A prayer without keva is not a prayer. I don't say this to harass you.
Yes.
I say it because the rabbis see prayer as something very specific, something that is affecting the world by sending a signal to God in some way.
Is it for some kind of secondary gain?
You can't repeating. Well, that's the thing. You don't get any gain by repeating. Is what the rabbis say. There's no repeating that is the gain. We actually, and if you do it wrong, you have to go back and do it again. Is the other thing. So prayer is set, and we want you to say the set prayers with intention, because it doesn't work without that either. It's not just sitting there and going, Shema Yisrael, like that's that doesn't do anything either. So it needs both. That's the point. But it needs both. So anyone who's like, oh yes, I'm Jewish by being like the tree, thank God for the tree. That's also not prayer. That's shtuya. That's nonsense. It's narishkeit. Because it's not prayer. Prayers are intentional. They have a formula. It's like trying to do math without a formula. That's really stupid. You're gonna fail. It's gonna be wrong. And when it's wrong, there's no amount of, when you get the math test wrong, can you go to the math teacher and say, Mrs. Norris, I felt that math test so deeply. I answered that question 6 times, Mrs. Norris. And she'll say, Lauren, it was wrong each of those times. You failed. 0 points. My God, have mercy on your soul. No. No, so it's like, that's what I'm saying about prayer. God's gonna say, okay, 6 times, great. Was it right once? Because that's what I really prefer.
So the expectation is if you do it right, you get an A.
The expectation is if you do it right with with the words that are correct and with intention, that you have done some part, some tiny 0.0001% thing towards the redemption of the world.
Towards what?
The redemption of the world.
That puts a lot of pressure on me.
Yeah, that's why you see people in Jerusalem, they are always saying, we need one more for Minyan. We're trying to make a Minyan. We need even more people. Please come in and pray with us.
Yeah.
The reason the Chabadniks want you to put tefillin on every time is they believe that if every male Jew on earth wrapped tefillin one morning, we wrap tefillin almost every morning that isn't Shabbos or a major holiday. There are certain days where we don't do it, but other Rosh Chodesh and stuff. But like other than that, most days, if every Jewish man on earth, they believe, wrapped tefillin at on a Tuesday morning, the word Mashiach would come.
Really?
Yes. That's how seriously they take it. That's why they're out wrapping people every day. Because they're like, maybe this is the one guy who hasn't. And if we wrap him into, I'm not being facetious, and I'm not insulting them. It's a fine thing to believe. But they're saying maybe he's the one, and if he wraps it, then I mean, if that was the stakes, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So that's what they believe the stakes are. The stakes of everybody doing it are that the Messiah comes and the world is redeemed.
No more golf.
No.
I was just saying I'm taking up golf.
Yeah.
So we're. But again, you can wrap tefillin and then play golf. There's no problem. Like again, you can be Jewish and enjoy things in the world. There's no contradiction there. There's plenty of hours in the day to both pray and to play golf or whatever you like, piano, woodworking, whatever it is you do, you can do. Judaism isn't asking you to sublimate your entire being to Judaism. Some of our more ultra-Orthodox friends sometimes do sublimate themselves in some ways to religion, but we're not asking anyone to eliminate who they are or what they like in the service of divine commandments. Only that you can do both. I truly believe as a modern person. In any event, that's the true story about the wrapping of the film.
I hope I'm not being horribly disrespectful.
I'm sure you're not. The internet won't be able to tell us who you are.
Be disrespectful.
Just to me, not to anyone else.
Inside my own mind, sometimes when they come, I think to myself, oh, here comes the Jewish Jehovah Witnesses. Yesterday, I was at Marie's gravesite, and my car stops and 2 women get out and approach me. And I'm thinking to myself, are they from our congregation? It's in Beth Tikva. Well, they stopped and spoke to me, and they were very pleasant and respectful and comforting in a way. And they gave me a little brochure. What they said to me is, we understand every faith has its own traditions, and we respect that. We believe in resurrection. Your loved one will come back. And when I went home, I looked at their brochure. They were Jehovah Witnesses.
Well, true. I mean, I guess I don't. It's weird because we have a version maybe of resurrection, but it's not at all like
They're the rapture.
Well, there's a very, but it's like we'll see what happens. Not that. I've honestly never been that bothered about what comes next. Something will happen. I hope it's great, but I can't know. I'm comforted by the fact that everyone who's had a near-death experience has been pretty positive about it.
Exactly.
So I'm comforted by that. Yeah, I don't think it pays to be scared of death anyway. It's going to happen anyway. What are you're going to be scared about it and ruin your whole life?
No.
That would be you'd be, as Kohelet says, right? That
We're
would be
back
a
to
waste, right?
Ecclesiastes, yeah.
Right. Then you'd be wasting your time.
Yeah.
Better to play golf and put on tefillin. If you did that, by the way, God would be super happy with you. If all you did is put on tefillin, pray, and play golf, God would think you were a chassid. Just so you know, God would be like, clearly this person loves me a lot. All he does is go around and enjoy the beautiful nature and pray and wrap tefillin. That would be perfect. Yeah, so right, so there we go about the that's why we get that about prayer. Yeah, if he had taught us the first halakha, we would have said that applies only to a case involving an individual who prayed and an individual who began to repeat the prayer, or a case where he prayed as part of a congregation and began to repeat it as part of the congregation. However, in a case where he initially prayed by himself and subsequently joined, this is just again explaining the last thing, subsequently joined the congregation at the venue where it was praying, the synagogue, the banquet hall, the wherever they're doing it. Orthodox Jews are a lot more comfortable about praying in ramshackle random places. Reform Jews are like, we want our nice seats, we want them lined up nice, we want the beautiful ark, we want the this. Orthodox Jews are like, we will pray in the basement of the Leonardo Plaza Hotel, like with like an ark and like cement walls. That's it. Like there's no problem. Anyway, right. We might have said that an individual vis-a-vis the congregation is considered as one who has not prayed. Right? Because you're saying, well, he didn't pray with the congregation. But that's not what we said. Therefore, he taught us that in this case, too, one may not repeat the prayer. In other words, you don't, just because you went to a synagogue doesn't mean that saying it before didn't count. So I guess the answer is, if I said Shema at home, I shouldn't repeat it when I go to the shul. And I guess vice versa in the evening. If I said it at shul, I shouldn't say it right before I go to bed. But I still do, because that's what I do. That's my minhag. That's what I've done for years. Anyway, therefore he taught us that in this case too, one may not repeat the prayer. And on the other hand, if he had taught us here only with regard to one who entered a synagogue, we would have thought that the reason he may not pray again is because he did not yet begin to recite the prayer. But there, in the case where he already began to recite the prayer, say that this is not the case and he may continue to repeat the prayer. Therefore, both statements are necessary. So as long as it introduces a new element, he can do it. And that's an important note that they made, that Shmuel made. Because if he hadn't, we wouldn't know that. We would have thought something else, which would have been wrong. Okay, now we got a new thing. Rav Huna said, one who did not yet pray and enters a synagogue and found that the congregation is in the middle of reciting the Amidah, if he is able to begin and complete his own Amidah before the prayer leader reaches the blessing of the Hoda'ah blessing, Modim Anachnu Lach, he should begin to pray. And if not, he should not begin to pray. Why is this important? Well, first of all, practically, the Amidah is long, right? There's a repetition, there's whatever. So if you go to shul, remember, there are a lot of Jews who show up, they're trying to show up for the Torah service. Maybe it's Shabbos morning or Monday or Thursday. They're trying to show up for the Torah service. Maybe they get there 10 minutes early and they're in the middle of the Amidah.
10 minutes late, yeah.
No, 10 minutes before the Torah service.
Oh, okay.
The Amidah is way into the service,
Yeah,
remember.
okay.
But a lot of Jews will skip Birchat Shachar because they do them at home or they just don't care. A lot of Jews in conservative and Orthodox synagogues don't come to the beginning of services. The beginning of services is only the most machmir folks and the rabbi in Cantor. And so they do all those blessings and stuff, but most people aren't there. And they show up usually a little bit before the Amidah. Usually for Shema V'chotecha. but sometimes for the Amidah. Sometimes they come for the Torah service and they come in the middle of the Amidah. And this is a guy who comes in the middle of the Amidah. And what it says is, when does he pray or not? The Amidah is the most important prayer. Does he join them or not? Well, remember, there's a personal Amidah and a recitation of the Amidah. So, if you can do, now everyone prays at a different speed. I bet I can do an Amidah faster than you guys can, and that's okay. But some people do it really fast. And if you can do a silent one very quick, correctly, no cuts, but correctly, and quickly enough that before the congregation, because they're singing, takes them some time, before they get to Modim, and to be fair, that's a while, right? Especially if it's all 19 blessings, then you've got like 16 blessings before you get to Modim. So you've got time. The question is, since you don't have to do the repetition with them while they're doing it, so can you do your prayer? Can you get through your part before they get to Modim out loud? At which point you can join them for Modim.
But you do your part silently.
Like you were going to anyway. Remember, when you do the Amidah here, we only do it out loud. When you do the Amidah, not conservative, but just Orthodox generally. When you do it at Orthodox synagogues, first, everyone does the Amidah silently. Everybody in the shul. Then, we do it out loud together. We do a recitation. The out loud recitation is a duplication. It's the second time we do it. The first time is silent. We sit there and we do it. That's how, again, we move it. We as Reform Jews flip it so that there's silent prayer that's part of the one time. In a traditional shul, you would get there, you would usually do a silent repetition and then you do an out loud repetition.
I have two questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Didn't we just say that you shouldn't do it twice? I know you
This
should.
is a special rule for the Amidah. It's the only one we do this way.
Okay.
They may be about to get into why, but it's the only one we do this way. But we do it this one prayer, the Amidah, this way.
Okay. And then the second one, I grew up in an Orthodox.
Sure, yeah.
Everybody was praying different words. Everybody was at a different tempo and a different level.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Is that what we're?
Yes, that's what we're talking. So when I say silently, I mean the leader isn't leading the congregation.
Okay.
Sometimes people will say it out loud as they go through it because there is a teaching that actually speaking the words is more praiseworthy than mouthing them.
Okay.
So there are people who will try and say it under their breath,
Yes.
and they'll say Baruch atah Adonai
Yeah.
Eloheinu. So it won't be silent, but we call it the silent rest. The first is quiet. It's not silent. You're right. Many people will say it out loud, but they'll say it under their breath because they're doing it themselves, and they'll do it at different pace, and then they'll stop, and then when people are done, the shots will or Cantor, whoever will lead will say, oh, we'll then start, and they'll do what they'll do the tune for the Amidah, and they'll do the chant of it, which everyone will do together. In this case, it's and because that's so unique, here we have a note about it. What do you do in this case? Because if you sit there, you might be like, well, I got time. I could have done it. And they're saying, yeah, if you have time, you should. But if you don't, you shouldn't, because we don't want you to start a blessing you're not going to finish. So if you're going to start the Amidah, which is long in many blessings, we don't want you to stop halfway through because the congregation is ready to go on to the Torah service, or is ready to go to Mishaberach, or is ready to move on to something, another part of the service. We don't want you behind everybody, right? We want you to keep up. We got to set the pace of play for everybody.
Is Rabbi Yoshua a Levite? Not a
Yes, he's a Levite.
So he would carry less importance.
No, the rabbis aren't. It's okay. I see why you would think that, but the rabbis are very happy to do away with the distinction, for the most part, between the three classes, so to speak, that exist at this point of Jew. In fact, the only way today we still preserve this truly is in the order of traditional aliyot many synagogues will give a special aliyah to the Levites and a special aliyah to the Kohanes, and then a third aliyah to right for the rest of the congregate for Israel, the rest of the Jews. That is really the only one of the few distinctions besides cemeteries that still holds by the rabbis. The rabbis,
So he's
for
in
purpose
fact-
of being a rabbi, you don't have to be anything. I'm a Stern, which doesn't mean jack. I'm Yisrael. I'm not a Kohen, I'm not a Levite, but I could be a better rabbi than any Levite or Kohen just by being a rabbi. Being a rabbi is a meritocracy. It's not based on blood. So we don't care who's a Levite and who's a Kohen. He happens to probably be a Levite. His father's name was Levi, so I'm assuming. But it might, he may be a Kohen even, but who cares? Yeah, right, exactly. They're just a smaller subsection of elite Levites.
He holds as much authority as any other.
Yes, all rabbis. Well, no, he holds a lot more than me because he's a rabbi of the Talmud and I'm a nobody. No, what I mean when I say that is that there are rabbis with more like oomph, with more credit than other rabbis. But it's based on merit. What have you written? What have you published? What opinions have you put out there? How well known are you? What positions have you held? And that means heads of schools, heads of B'tei Din, courts, positions on high institutions. I'm on the board of certain organizations. That helps. And so a rabbi earns the ability to make bigger swings, so to say, in what they put out there based on their merit, how meritorious they are, how much writing and speaking and accomplishing they've done. Not based on their blood, but based on what they've done. But they are better. There are rabbis certainly who are better and taken more seriously than other rabbis. In every movement, by the way, not just in the Orthodox world. Every movement has rabbis that people know and look up to because of their positions and their gravitas and what they've done out in the world, versus rabbis who have been quieter maybe and aren't published and different, and aren't a part of this bigger project, and are more like. It's kind of like how, I don't know, there's probably no direct analog. I was going to say it's like for doctors where it's like, you can be like a brain surgeon or you can be like the guy who does boo-boos on kids at a family medicine practice. To be fair, nobody wants to do the second one and we need people to, but at the same time, like there's no glory in that. You're not going to get invited to speak at the conference in Hawaii on how I treated the boo-boo on the 6-year-old. But if you treated a glioblastoma, then you're going to get invited to speak about, you know what I mean? Like, so that's what I mean, is like, if I write and hundreds of thousands of people read what I write, I have more oomph than a rabbi twice my age who has spent his whole career just doing bar mitzvahs and stuff at home. You know what I mean? I'm bigger than him. It's just the way it is, because I claimed a place in the world bigger than that. But it's based on merit, not based on blood. Thank God.
Not in autocracy is the word.
It's an oligarchy in a way. No one elects rabbis. And rabbinic courts are not elected either. And rabbis have no checks on every rabbi is a king, essentially, not a king, you know what I mean? A fief ruler, in the sense of like, you go to that rabbi who has territory that the other rabbis aren't supposed to encroach on, and you ask that rabbi opinions. And if he's the only rabbi, then what are you going to do? Now, in big cities, people go get multiple opinions, like with doctors.
Really?
Oh yeah, if a rav gives you an opinion you don't like, you go to another rav. Sorry, rav, right? That's what they call nowadays. Orthodox rabbis don't want to be called rabbi; they want to be called rav, because that way they're like, this way we're better than the reforming and it's like we're better than this. Plus, we're in diaspora anyway, so we should all be rav. When I get called to the bima, I'm harav Shmuel. Anyway.
You help me understand something we do here that I've always very much appreciated and respected as kind and sensitive you do. When we're saying the Amidah, you, at a certain point, we end together and you say, finish your Amidah
Yeah.
silently. And when you're ready, sit down. So you're waiting so that we can all join together.
Yes, right.
Yeah, okay, I
Right,
understand that.
and so because of how we do it, where we put a silent part of the Amidah, we basically cut the Amidah in half and do the first half out. That's how we do our version of repetition. Essentially, we do the first part out loud and the second part silently. We don't sing any of it. There is a tune. We could do it. We don't. Instead, and most Reform synagogues are like this. Instead, I let you either do that or innovate and be seated when you finished. And then at that point, we come together for the last blessing and we kind of finish it as a recitation together when we sing Oseh Shalom, when we sing our prayer for peace. Now, to be fair, normally we should probably do Yehi L'Ratzon or something, because that, but Oseh Shalom is also at the end, so it's fine. So either one is really good. We should do both, whatever. Anyway, so that's so yes, we do that because I'm trying to structure it in such a way that it makes sense as a version of as a true version of saying a real Amidah. I'm trying to protect the integrity of what the synagogue does in what I say. Okay, we got like 10 minutes. So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who we were just talking about, said, if he is able to begin and complete his prayer before the prayer leader reaches Kedusha, then he should begin to pray. If not, then he should not begin to pray. So what's the difference between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi? Also note, Rav Huna is a easygoing diasporist, like me here in the diaspora. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is a Machmir Eretz Yisraeler who lives in Eretz Yisrael, right? We know that because Rav Huna's name is Rav Huna, and Rav comes from Babylon, and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is Rabbi, so he's from Eretz Yisrael. So I like to point that out so you can keep that tension in there. So what is the difference? Where is Modim in the Amidah compared to the Kedusha?
Much later.
Much later, exactly. Just a second later, just a little bit later, if you're doing, not even just a second, it's 2 prayers later, but it's 2 prayers later if it's Shabbos. If it's not Shabbos, it's way later, right? So Kedusha is the 3rd blessing. So he's saying if they've just started being out loud, then you probably have enough time. What's he doing really? He's making a fence.
Yes.
Right? Like rabbis like to do, they protect you from making a mistake. Rav Huna might be right. All you need, if you're fast, is for them to be at Modim. As long as they haven't reached Modim, you have enough time to do yours before they finish the Amidah.
Right.
Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi doesn't think so, though. He thinks you don't have enough time. He thinks you only have enough time just to be safe. You shouldn't start unless they're all the way back at Kedusha. He says then you have enough time.
Okay.
Right? It's a debate really here over which one, how much time they're willing to give you. Rav Huna says, no, you'll be quick. He believes in you. The rabbis don't like to believe in you. They like to make sure you don't mess up. Right? Just like we heard, I think it was Rabbi Akiva's kids, Rabbi Eliezer's kids, one of the rabbi's kids, Rabbi Elazar's kids. They come home at the beginning of the Barachot, we read this with Shema. They come home from a wedding late at night and they say, Papa, can we say Shema still? And he's like, technically, yes. But the rule says not after midnight. Not because you can't, but because we don't want people to get into the habit of waiting until after midnight to say it. So we set the rule earlier. Same thing here. Yehoshua ben Levi is saying, let's make it at Kedusha. This way, we'll make sure they finish before we finish. If we start here, they might not. Even though we say they will because we think they'll be fast enough, what if they're slow? Then we've ruined the whole thing. Again, the stakes are high. So we're not willing to do that. So he says maybe you should set the bar further back so that we don't cause people to transgress. Right? The rabbis are very concerned with who takes responsibility for sin. If they burden the community, if they make the wrong rules, then they're responsible for ruining the whole project, essentially. And they're very concerned with that. And that's why the fences exist. Not because the rabbis hate us or because the rabbis want us to suffer. God forbid, they don't want that. They want us not to transgress the Torah if we can manage it. The Gemara clarifies. It says, with regard to, oh, well, we just did that. So, with regard to what do they disagree? The basis for their dispute is that one sage, Rav Huna, holds an individual is permitted to recite Kedusha on his own, so he need not insist on reciting it along with the prayer leader. And the other sage, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, holds that an individual may not recite Kedusha alone. This is just like Baruch Hu and Shema. Certain prayers you're not allowed to say without 10 people. And therefore he's required to complete his prayer before the communal prayer leader reaches Kedusha. So in this case, there's another problem that the Gemara is bringing up. There are many problems with this. One of them is that Rav Huna, and you might not have known this, says that you can say Kedusha on your own. So if you're doing your own Amidah at home, you can say Kedusha. Yehoshua ben Levi, again, in Eretz Yisrael, says you can't do that. That halacha says only a group of 10, like with Baruch Hu, like with Chatzi Kaddish, Kedusha, like Kaddish, again, holiness. Because of that, he says, like Kaddish, Kedusha can only be said with 10 people, with a minyan. And since you need a minyan, you should be done before then, because you won't be able to, when you catch up to it, you'll be saying it by yourself, which you're not allowed to do. So it can be a couple of problems. Yeah.
Can one say, in this instance, Rabbi Yehoshua is, I think Mahir is the word you used, the more strict.
Machmir, yeah.
Machmir, okay, is more strict.
Comes from Hamer, which means heavy or weight.
Okay,
It's called a Humra, is another way of saying that, which means a stringency.
okay.
So Machmir comes, one who is being stringent, is what that means.
And he's Yerushalmi, whereas Rav comes from Babylon.
Yes.
Can one generalize and say the Jerusalem rabbis were much
A little
more
stricter.
Yeah.
A little, yeah, I think that's a generally fair assessment. To say that the rabbis of Eretz Yisrael were a little more stringent. And to be fair, we get that here more than anyone. We are the Babylon of today. We're the big, powerful diaspora community that's able to live out loud. At least we have been for the past many years. That's Babel. They had an exilarch. They had a community. They had an official status in that empire. Like, I mean, that was them. And because they lived, not assimilated, I wouldn't say, but because they lived a life of coexistence, not based on just whatever stringent rules they could come up with, but based on meeting people where they were so that the community didn't fall apart in exile. Yes, I would say they, like us, were less Orthodox Jews in America. It's true. There are towns where they've become just as strict as Israel. But Orthodox Jews in most places in America, outside like New York, Miami, LA, if you live in Seattle or you live in Kansas City or you live in certain cities, you're going to be a little less machmir than your Orthodox cousins in Jerusalem. Nebra.
Are there even neo-Orthodox in Israel? Or
What does that mean, neo-Orthodox?
maybe I'm using the
Modern Orthodox? Yeah, there are modern Orthodox in
There are.
plenty, yeah. Yeah, they're egalitarian Orthodox in Israel. In fact, Shmuel Goldberg Poland belonged to an egalitarian Orthodox. That sounds like it sounds, but these days people want that.
Yeah.
Israel is really going through a lot of different ways of experimenting with Jewish identity. We don't have as many, but now even that is being imported here by Israelis who move here and by communities who look for that. So New York and LA both have what are essentially, and Mizrahi communities tend to power this too somewhat, a kind of egalitarian Orthodox, in which they believe and they try to hold to halacha, but they allow men and women to sit together at prayers and meals, and they're not so stringent on things like tzniut or tznius, the rules of modesty, covering past elbows and knees for men and women, and for married women covering their hair. Issues of, again, they're strict on a lot of things like kashrut, education, but there are certain things that are a little, again, I'm not saying they're not orthodox. They're just a little more, and some of it's a little more egalitarian, like they'll let men and women sit next to each other without or they'll have a mechitza that's like see-through, or like just a bar, but like it's kind of not really, it's like, so they'll have a mechitza, but it's kind of pretend, or they'll have a tri-chitza, where they'll have a men's section, a women's section, and a co-ed section. So if you really want to sit with your spouse or something, which it's not forbidden for you to like touch your you know what I mean? So like, and as long as it's not Nita. Nita is you got it, before Bikla.
Yeah.
So as long as it's not Nita, you can, so like they'll have maybe three, and so you can pray with men if you want, pray with women if you want, or pray co-ed if you want. And that I think is a beautiful option. I see no problem with segregated prayer as long as there is an equal option for non-segregated prayer, by the way. Judaism, I think, has room for both of those ideas.
I remember as a kid being so struck. We had a mechitza in our synagogue in Montreal. My cousin who lived in Toronto and I would visit Christmas vacations. We go back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
They were Reformed. And I remember being struck by, my goodness, the family can sit together.
Yeah, we like that. I've always said, my big thing is I just don't want a future where there's, look, if Chabad tomorrow changed on like 4 things, which they can't do, or they wouldn't be Chabad. But if they changed on like 4 things, if they had another Rebbe Schneerson come down and say, also let men and women sit together, also be nice to the Reformim, also, like 3 or 4 things. Then I might even switch. Like, honestly, they could get a lot more people, I think. But again, it's like there's a lot, they try their best. They really do. They try to be, they try and phrase everything in the best, most inclusive way. They try very hard.
Yes.
But there are things they can't compromise on that we can, that we're willing to. And that's the way it goes. I just want to say that before we wrap up here, we get a comment about how do we know, which is always good to finish on. V'chein, therefore, or similarly, Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava, Rav Ada bar Ahava stated, in accordance with the second opinion, from where is it derived that an individual may not recite Kedusha alone? As it is stated in Leviticus, and I shall be hallowed among the children of Israel. V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. Any expression of sanctity, of Kedusha, may not be recited in a quorum of fewer than 10. Lo yehe pachot me'asara. Right, and of course, we leave that off as Reformed Jews, but Steinsaltz makes sure to say when it says fewer than 10, but in case you're confused, we don't mean 10 Jews. We mean 10 male Jews, because the Orthodox don't count them in a minyan.
And that comes from hallowed among the children.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Because because we're hallowed among the community.
Yes.
Any prayer that has to do with Kedusha, like Chatzi Kaddish, Kadisha, any of these Kaddish prayers can't be recited without a minyan. You need a minyan in order to say any prayer that involves Kedusha. Which is which is a couple of there's a couple throughout the service, and we've never had a service here on a Friday night where we failed to make minyan. But if we did, I would cut those prayers. I would be like, we're not going to recite these, or we're going to recite them silently, because we don't recite them when we don't have a quorum. But I've never failed to get a minyan for a Friday night service.
We're reading this book in book club.
Yeah.
Notes on being a man. And
cool.
He tries to highlight what's important in being a man. But when you have that up there, this is a Jewish guy who's an atheist. So I question whether he could really write the notes on being a man.
I think you're right. I think it's hard to assess the holistic nature of masculinity without being able to wrestle with your creator. I agree with you. I think that I think that an atheist could learn but they could learn the same way they learn morality, by being living in a society that's been marinated in it. They essentially, it's serving atheists are the non-vaccinated of our society. Atheists can only, and their morality comes from the fact that they live in a society where there's herd morality, herd immunity.
Yeah.
We've all decided on morality, and therefore you can be an atheist because you're just going to imbue our morality and say it's just general. But in a society that wasn't ours, general morality would look very different. The general atheist morality of this nation was not randomly come up with by atheists. It's Judeo-Christian morality, just without God, which is up to them. They're welcome to do, I guess. But as I said, if enough of society went that way, and I think I hate to sound like, John Hagee or something, but I think that's what we're seeing in society, is that there aren't enough people who believe in the rules, believe in God, believe in the basic decency and equality of human beings, believe in the religious ethics and morals that we've been taught. And because of that, we're seeing a lot more utilitarian philosophy. We're seeing a lot more political violence. And all of this is because of a lack of God, a lack of divine morality. Because enough people have replaced the morality that this country was using with their own morality that they've lost the plot. They've gone astray. That's, again, now it hasn't ruined everything yet because we still have enough people, but eventually you will reach it. There will be, like with anything, there's a tipping point at which society will essentially lose its moral standing because enough people don't believe in morality, don't believe in a shared morality. And our shared morality was a religious one, whether or not anyone wants to believe that.
You're much more articulate in saying what I was trying to say at the time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It'll be online if you want to go back and see it again.
You can read his conflict, and it's a very clear conflict. He does describe himself as an atheist, but at one point he also describes himself as having a God-shaped hole in his life.
Well, so that's those people. I like to say those people aren't atheists. They're just like, I don't know what to say because it's going to sound insulting, but I don't really care. They're like kids who are mad at God, right? Like, I mean, like that guy acknowledges God exists. If he says there's a God-shaped hole in his life, that guy knows God exists. He just is mad. He just doesn't want to engage with God, that actually is the kind of person God is really upset. It's not even like someone who's just a fool and doesn't believe in God. This person is choosing not to, it's like, I believe God is there and I hate God. I won't recognize God. And that's the kind of person God's like, ooh, I don't like that guy. So he should watch out.
He's over intellectualized. He's scientific. It's where
I know, I'm just joking about it. He's not cursed by God. Yeah, I'm sure God loves him.
Yeah.
As God loves us all as God's children. Right. That was